Hello and welcome to the Your Gym Big Sister podcast / hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. So this is my first ever podcast YouTube crossover video. I just never really film my podcast. Well, obviously I film the podcasts when I record them on Riverside, but I never post them anywhere because I started my podcast purely for the reason that I could film it at 6 o'clock in the morning and look disgusting. And I was like, nobody needs to see my 6 a.m. face. But I decided that for this week's podcast / YouTube video, it would be kind of cool to do this Q&A as a video as well. So the video is going to be going up on YouTube. The podcast is obviously going up on the podcast. If you love listening to my dulcet tones and you think, hey, I want to watch her as she speaks, now you can do that on YouTube, which of course I always appreciate any views for YouTube. I appreciate any listens for my podcast as well. Let's get straight into that. If you are listening to this or watching this, which obviously you are doing, whatever platform you're on, I would really appreciate it if you either subscribe to me as a YouTuber. That doesn't really make sense. Subscribe to my YouTube channel, give it a like, give it a comment, share it. If you're listening to me on podcasts, whether that's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, of course, I really appreciate any follows on there, any engagement with my podcast. I always forget what you can do. You can definitely comment on my podcast. I'm pretty sure on Spotify. Maybe you can save it. Potentially, you can give the podcast a review, and especially you can give the podcast a 5-star review only. Okay, thank you. If I catch you giving me anything less than 5 stars, I'm going to come to your house and I'm going to have a serious word with you. But if you give me a 5-star review, I'll come to your house and I'll give you a hug. So, win-win for you and for me. And of course, as always, if you share it on your social media and tag me at emma.curvin, I always do appreciate that. And of course, make sure you're following me on Instagram because that's where I got all the questions for this week's Q&A podcast. So I wanted to do a Q&A that was specifically about bodybuilding because obviously I love bodybuilding, right? It's my jam. I'm competing as a bodybuilder. I coach bodybuilders. It's the life that I live. It's what I love. And I'm staying true to that. I'm not straying from bodybuilding anytime soon, okay? And I often do get questions about the sport, whether that's about competing, classes, federations, things like PEDs, preps. So I said, let's sit down, collate a load of questions about the process of bodybuilding. And I would just answer them kind of rapid fire enough. So that's what I've done. Just before we get into the podcast or the video, since this is both, I suppose I should give you guys a little bit of the usual update. So I believe this podcast will be coming out on Friday the 27th. So I might wait to release the video until then as well. So they might go up together. But I'm hoping that you enjoyed your Christmas, that you enjoyed a nice big Christmas dinner. I will have had my Christmas dinner because I'm literally only 1 to 2 weeks into prep, and I said to Christian, bro, I'm having my Christmas dinner, and he was like, yeah, that's fine. But I'm hoping that the rest of the week has gone swimmingly. Obviously coming into the Christmas week and being on prep, I don't really know how it's gonna go. I don't know what people are gonna think. I think that's my main source of not anxiety at the moment, but listen, anybody who has a family who isn't really into bodybuilding will know that it's difficult at the best of times. I imagine at Christmas they're going to be like, what the fuck are you doing? Why are you prepping right now? But listen, it's a decision that I made. It's a choice I made. I didn't have to do this. I decided to do this. But prep so far, there's really not much to say. It's Thursday the 19th right now, and I'm flying home to Dublin today. But yeah, this week, it's just been kind of getting into prep, getting into, my food, my training, steps, cardio, all that good stuff. I did have a pretty big drop the first day from 167.6 down to 164. Then I dropped to 163, and then all week it's been 163, 163, 163.4, 163.6. I'm kind of hoping that I'm about to get my period. We will wait and see. I feel a bit luteal, but I don't know. I'm checking in with Christian again tomorrow. I'm kind of hoping he pulls my food down, if I'm being honest, because I would rather eat nothing and be seeing that scale move. That's just me personally. I don't really want to piss around and have my food high. I don't care for it. But we'll see. He's the man with the plan. I trust him, and who knows, like I might see a big whoosh. My weight does tend to do this. It tends to like hold and then whoosh and then hold and then whoosh. So I'm just riding the wave, and yeah, just getting into it. I'm definitely excited to get home in January and just be settled into my routine and not have like loads of stuff. Obviously I'm gonna have a bit of travel next year. Like I'll be traveling, probably traveling to Manchester to see Christian, probably traveling, you know, to get my bikinis fitted, traveling for other things, and you know, then traveling for the shows. But there's going to be like long stints of time in between all that travel, whereas it's just been non-stop recently. So I'm excited for that. But yeah, there's really not much to update you on as it pertains to prep, because I'm still fat. That's a joke, by the way. I'm not fat. I'm still chunky and a bit soft, and I'm excited to get shredded. And obviously, you know, classic, when you do get kind of, or when you are getting into prep, you're like a week in and you're like, do I have abs yet? And unfortunately, I do not have abs yet. But okay, we're going to get into this Q&A because like I said, it's going to be all about bodybuilding. There's definitely a few common themes and topics that did come up, which I'm excited to dive into. Obviously something, I don't know, kind of big-ish came in the other day in the NPC, and I've gotten a lot of questions about that, so I will definitely be talking about that. But for now, I'm just going to go through the questions, okay? So let's get straight into it. I have saved all of these on my phone. There's loads of them. Like I said, a lot of them are kind of similar. So it's good because any of those ones where there was like quite a few questions about the topic, I'm going to give a thorough explanation, I suppose you could say. But let's dive straight into it, okay? And question number one. So question number one is, how did you get the balls to get on stage? I'd love to, but I think I'd die from people looking at me. I honestly was the exact same. I feel like when I did my first prep, I sort of forgot about the whole competing part, the whole stage part, until maybe two weeks out. Don't get me wrong, I was obviously posing, like doing all my posing practice and stuff like that, but I think I never really thought about the fact that there was going to be a stage day until really close to the show, and then I was like, oh shit. So I feel like I just dove right in, and I didn't let myself think about that part, and I didn't let myself kind of get scared. The first time I got up on stage was definitely terrifying. I don't think anything can really prepare you for that feeling of walking out on a stage. And to be fair, in a lot of venues you can't actually see the crowd, which is really helpful because the way the lights are, so all you can see is the judges really. So you know, because of that, it wasn't too intimidating to walk out and kind of see, like, you know, I wasn't seeing like a million, yeah, because there was a million people at the fucking WNBF Ireland show. Not a million people, but like 100 people or whatever, right? I couldn't see them. So that definitely helped a lot. All I remember from that first show is I was super nervous. I was walking out and I was like, holy fuck. Also, I had pumped up and then they kept us at the side of the stage, so I'd gone really flat and I was really cold, and I was very aware of that, and I was thinking, oh, for fuck's sake, I'm not going to look that good right now. But we walked out, and I remember I actually knew one of the judges, not personally or anything, but I knew who she was, and I just like locked eyes on her. I'd say she was like, why is this girl staring at me? But I just found comfort in that. So that kind of got me through. I don't remember much about my first experience up on stage. I feel like, not that I blacked out, but I couldn't hear anything at all, except for the instructions. But yeah, I think when it comes to like, how did you get the balls to do it? Like, I don't know. I'm not a performer. I'm not a performer. I've never been a stage kid. I was never a dancer. I was never an actor. I'm not the type of person who would have been up on a stage. But I just didn't really think about it until the last possible moment. And I think that helped. But the more you do it, the easier it gets. And I actually love being up on stage now. And I'm so excited to do it again. I think a good way to think about it is, first of all, you've put so much work in to present your best. So you should want to get up on stage to do that and to like let people see you. And you know, you have to remember as well, all the people who are in the crowd and the judges, they're there to see a bodybuilding show. I think there's something scary about the concept of getting up on a stage in front of people who don't care for the sport, because they're going to be looking at you like, what the fuck? But remember, everybody there, like, they're there to see, whether it's the show in general or to see somebody they know. So they're expecting to see people on stage in, you know, a bra and pants. So yeah, it is definitely like a scary one. And when you say it out loud, it's like, I'm just going to get up on stage painted brown in a very sparkly piece of underwear. It is a bit terrifying. For me, the thing I was scared the most about was the walk. And to be fair, that first year, my walk was terrible. It's still not great yet, but it's definitely improved a lot. So I think part of it as well just comes down to making sure you've practiced your posing, right? Like if you've practiced your posing so much, then you shouldn't be scared to be up on stage because you're going to know what to do. So yeah, basically the answer is I didn't really think about what I was doing. I just did it. And it was kind of terrifying, but I was so invested in the process of bodybuilding that it just never really crossed my mind. Okay, someone asked, what is my cycle during prep? I'm not going to tell you that. Obviously fucking not. Yeah, I'm going to just announce on the internet, on YouTube, exactly what I'm doing. No, I'm very open about the fact that I'm not a natural athlete. I will talk about what compounds I'm using, but I'm not going to tell you dosages or anything like that because I don't want someone to copy me. To be fair, the information is in places on the internet if you look hard enough, but I'm not going to direct you where. You have to go and do the finding. Okay, so a lot of people have asked about how to pick your class and how to pick your category when it comes to bodybuilding. So one person asked, should you base the class you pick on how you like to train or your genetics? And someone else asked, how do you know what category federations is right for you? And someone else asked, how should you choose your class, by your current physique or by class preference? E.g., I know I'm suited best to bikini right now, but I would prefer to look more muscular than a bikini girl. Okay, so there's a few things that I think come into this. So when it comes to choosing a federation, in my opinion, the main two categories of federation that you're looking at is natural federations versus non-tested federations. So tested versus non-tested. So do you want to compete as a natural athlete or do you want to compete in shows where there's, you know, assisted athletes, potentially be assisted yourself? Once you've kind of picked that will help you break down which federation. So I would usually say, for example, if you want to compete in a tested federation, in the natural federations, places like the WNBF, potentially the INBA, PNBA, they'd be some of the main ones. The BNBF in the UK, that's linked with the DFAC. Once you start getting into all these federations, it can get so confusing. That's why I always say, like, just hire a coach who can direct you in the right place. But that would be the main non-tested federations, and then really the main those would be the main not tested federations. Oh my god, my brain. This is what happens when I try and record this early in the morning. The main natural federations, that would be them, and then the main unnatural federations or non-tested federations would probably be the IFBB, the NPC, and in the UK the PCA. Obviously there is more federations, but in my opinion those are the main two, and obviously the NPC, IFBB, that's sort of the pinnacle, you know, if you want to go to the Olympia, be pro and compete in all these huge pro shows across the world. The PCA is a great federation too. They're a bit more like local to the UK. They do have pro shows around the world, but it's not to the same extent as the NPC and the IFBB. So that's how you kind of pick your federation. Which one do you align with? Which one do you like the look of? You know, I decided to go NPC IFBB because that's all the people that I follow. I think their shows look amazing. I love that they have shows everywhere that you can do. You can do, like, I can go and do pro qualifiers all across Europe. I really like that. So, you know, that kind of comes down to picking the federation and then picking the category and the class. There's kind of two ways to look at it. One is genetics, and then two is preference within training. So I think genetics is going to be your ultimate one. If you're 6 foot tall, there is nothing you can do to be a wellness girl. I'm sorry, it's not going to happen. Okay, look at the top wellness competitors. They're all under 5'6", and honestly most of them are about 5'3". You know, I'm 5'6" and I'm tall for a wellness girl. Okay, so that, you know, if you're someone who's long and, you know, long limbed and sort of lean and streamlined, you're probably going to be bikini. However, you know, with enough years of training, maybe you might end up being figure. If you have a naturally super wide back, super wide shoulders and big quads, you're probably going to be figure. If you have, again, if you're short and kind of stocky, you know, and your lower body just is more developed, you're probably going to be wellness. So generally I can look at somebody and kind of know, okay, you're wellness, you're bikini, you're figure. I think wellness is the most genetically determined class. If you don't have the genetics, don't get me wrong, you can train that way and end up looking good. You know, I would probably put myself kind of in that category. I'm not saying I look good yet. I definitely genetically have dominant lower body. That was all the feedback that I got as a figure competitor, was your lower body's super dominant, you need a much bigger upper body. I have a very narrow upper body, so genetically I do suit wellness a bit more, but I'm not that sort of crazy, you know, like, you know, those girls that you just look at them and they're just stocky, like that's the word I always use. They're just got really like bubbly legs and they're just they're so wellness, right? That's so genetic. And if you don't have those kind of like, you know, low down inserting glutes, like, you know, I'm lucky enough, I have a pretty like deep glute ham tie-in, I've got big sweeping quads. You know, if you don't really have that, it's quite hard to build into that and grow into that. So you would probably be better off, you know, if you love training legs, probably better off doing something like figure, right? So I think wellness is the most genetically determined class. It's the same like classic physique. I think classic physique, you're either classic or you're not. There's a lot of guys who try to be classic who are just small. But you know, you either have that super small waist and that real, again, you know, big, wide, cap delts and big legs and stuff like that. When it comes to bikini v figure, and then going up into more muscular categories, so when you look at like figure, women's physique, and women's bodybuilding, they're all very similar, but it's just going up the scale in terms of how much muscle they have and how lean they are. So I do think with figure, your shape really matters. So shape is that sort of X frame, super wide shoulders, really small waist, really big leg. But I have seen bikini girls become figure girls. I've actually seen some figure girls downsize to bikini, because I think there is a bit more of a, not a blurred line between those, but I think you can grow into one category. But again, bikini, if you don't have like, again, like the small waist, the kind of small legs, before I even started training, my legs were too big for bikini, you know? So I do think the genetics matters, but then your preference does too. So if you can't stand the thought, you know, like, look, girls who train for bikini, if you're only getting into it, you have to train fucking hard and you have a lot of muscle to put on. But if you look at the top bikini girls and how they train, I can't imagine anything worse. You know, I love Laura Lee. She's gorgeous. She's gorgeous, right? But have you seen her train now? Like, it's sprints, plyos. She's doing all this stuff to keep herself small. That sounds like hell on earth to me. I've got quite a lot of bikini girls. They don't train any quads. I can't let them train quads because they've already got a bit of quad, and if they have any more, they're going to outsize bikini. So if that's something that you're okay with doing, you know, I know some, again, what's her name? Amy Delgado doesn't train in the off season. She just doesn't train. That's not bodybuilding to me. Like, I love bodybuilding, right? Again, if they obviously enjoy doing that and they're the best of the best. So what they're doing is working for them. But if you see people training that way and you're already pretty developed and you think, oh God, like, I don't want to have to stop training just to, you know, fit into a certain criteria, then maybe you would be suited to move up to something like figure. I think a lot of bikini girls think that they can just cross over into wellness, especially if they have or they carry a bit more body fat in their off season in their lower body, and that's just like not true. I think there's more of a crossover from bikini into figure, because it's hourglass X frame, but it's just with more mass. Obviously it takes time. So I think your preference for the category and the training is going to matter. If you love training hard, heavy, training your entire body, you're probably not going to stay in bikini very long. You might, and again, like this girl asked, you know, she kind of said, I'm best suited to bikini right now, but I'd probably look more muscular. I'd probably prefer to look more muscular in a bikini girl. There's nothing to say that you can't do a season in bikini, get a feel for competing, get stage experience, and then move into another category. I know lots of people that do that. Hey, I did that, right? I competed in figure, and you know, I'm sure back then I thought I would stay in figure, but I kind of knew, I knew during the prep that I was going to move into wellness. And it wasn't like I just decided, oh, I'm not going to bother competing now because I know I want to go into a different class. I still did my best within that class. So yes, your preference. And then another thing is even things like, you know, the posing and stuff. So bikini is so beautiful, right? Like, those girls are fucking stunning. I mean, I think every female bodybuilder is absolutely stunning, but with bikini, you are judged on the overall presentation, your hair, your makeup, how your face looks, how your bikini looks. It's a bit more pageanty, I would say. It's still bodybuilding, it's still very much bodybuilding, but there's more of an element of the kind of pageantry, beauty, posing, everything like that. Who catches your eye? I would argue in classes like figure, I'm not saying those women are not beautiful as well, but they don't really care too much about your hair and your makeup. It is more so about the physique. The posing, even for bikini, it's flowy, it's beautiful, it's kind of sexy, you know. I don't know. I mean, to be fair, wellness posing is kind of similar, and it's something that I struggle with a little bit. But the figure posing, it's a bit more, you know, powerful, I would say, and there's less kind of, I mean, I would argue Sydney Gillen's posing is probably some of the most beautiful posing in the entire NPC and IFBB, but she's a very rare specimen. Sydney Gillen is, I think, 8-time Miss Figure Olympia, and she just retired, but her posing is phenomenal. But yeah, I would argue she's a bit of a unicorn, but like most figure posing, it's not quite as flowy and beautiful. So again, I think you have to think about, when you look at girls on stage, can you see yourself in that class? Okay, and obviously, can you see yourself in that class, and is it realistic? And I would say, if you're not sure about what category to do, ask a coach, okay? Like, hire a coach and ask them, because that's their job. Like, they should know. And then, you know, again, I could get really into the weeds here. Say we think about figure, okay? Well, maybe you might want to do PCA. Should you do toned figure? Should you do athletic? Should you do train figure? Which one? And again, it just depends. It depends on sort of your genetics, how long you've been training, how much muscle you have, how lean you can get. So basically, to answer your question, kind of genetics, kind of preference. Genetics mostly, okay? You cannot change what God gave you. You can work hard and you can develop. And I've seen people who, you might look at them, you know, their before pictures and think there's absolutely no way that person could do X class. And then with enough years of growing, they do. So if you really want to do a class and you're willing to take the time, go for it. But if it's so far away from your genetics, you might be fighting an uphill battle, you know? Like, that was me with figure. I just knew I was going to fight an uphill battle with trying to get my upper body to be big enough, and I didn't want it to be either. Again, that was a big thing for me, preference-wise. I didn't want to walk around looking like a figure athlete. It didn't appeal to me. Again, I'm not saying anything bad about figure athletes. I think they're beautiful. I don't want my upper body to be that big. I want a giant pair of legs and a giant ass, so that was okay with me. So someone asked, is it safe for women to compete multiple times naturally, or is it too much damage to the body? This is a question that is kind of hard to answer because it is so person dependent. Let's take case number one, case me. I competed naturally once. I've always had sort of sensitive hormones anyway, and it took me about a year post-show to get my period back. So let's say I decided to stay natural and not use any sort of HRT or anything like that. I would be putting myself in a position of massive risk if I decided to compete even every 2 years. So let's say I did a show, I lost my period early in the prep, I didn't get it back for a year later, I had a period for 3 or 4 months, and then went straight into another prep, and I had no hormonal baseline assistance in there. I'm staying in a very amenorrheic state for a long time with no testosterone, no estrogen, and no progesterone. That's not safe long term for your brain health, your bone health, even things like your heart health and your fertility. But that's me. I'm very unresilient. I know some natural girls who barely lose their period ever. Maybe they might miss one cycle and then they get it back straight away. So for those girls, I would argue, of course, it's completely safe for them to do it. I'm not saying it's like, listen, bodybuilding is not safe. It's not healthy. It doesn't matter what way you do it. As a female, having your body in that state is not healthy, okay? And I would always argue that doing it year on year on year on year is probably not a good idea. I would always say you should take, you know, maybe a year off in between seasons, especially if you still have growing to do. But just, and you know, when we think about health, there's your physical health, but there's also your mental health. I personally don't think it's healthy for your brain to be stage lean every single year, because your brain adapts and your brain is going to think that you look like that. And then when you're not stage lean, you're going to think that you're fat or unworthy and that you look really, really bad, which isn't the case. I don't struggle with my body image too much in an off season because I've only been stage lean once so far in my life. And I know that that's not how I normally look, and that this is kind of how I normally look, right? So there's the psychological health component, but then there's also the physical health component. But the physical health component is it's so person dependent and genetically dependent. I know girls, like I've heard of girls getting pregnant during preps. Like, that's wild to me because I'm so far away from that as a genetic hormonal individual, but some people are like that. So I can't tell somebody it's safe or it's not safe. You have to look at your history and your hormonal history, right? You know, Do you have a normal period? Do you have a normal ovulatory cycle? Do you keep that period when you diet? Do you lose it the first, like, you know, like me, first whiff of a diet, especially first whiff of any sort of anabolics, gone. And it's a risk that I take. I also use HRT to help with that. And so I do have a baseline of hormonal assistance in there. But, you know, some people are going to be like me, and some people will be in the middle. They might lose their period for a few months, then they get it back. Doing that, you know, every few years, I don't think is like necessarily that bad. If your number one goal in life is to be a mother and you want to be a mother next year, I'd probably say you shouldn't compete this year, because you're not going to give your body the best chance to be as fertile as possible. I think as well, like, one thing that I always find interesting, you know, I hear a lot of people hugely bash bodybuilding for this reason. They're like, anything that makes a girl lose their period is so bad. And I'm not saying it's not bad, but there's something else that makes girls lose their periods that we just don't really talk about, and that's hormonal contraceptives. You know, you take a hormonal contraceptive, you're in a hormone suppressed state for years. I've had women come to me, they've been on hormonal contraceptives for 18 years. That sounds way less healthy to me than losing your period once every few years. Personally, that's what I think. Okay, if you're in that hormone suppressed state because you're taking an exogenous synthetic hormone that doesn't function the same as the endogenous hormone, that's not good for you either. But we won't talk about that, okay? But yeah, so the real answer is, I can't tell. It's person dependent. It completely depends. So you have to just look at how your body has responded. That was part of the reason why I made the decision to go assisted. Also, the other part was I knew to be competitive in wellness, I was going to need some anabolics. So that's why I did that. Continuing with the theme of PEDs, because I have had somebody ask, well, I've had a few things. So I asked somebody asked where to start in terms of researching PEDs. And then someone said, if it's not too late, where should training, nutrition and habits be before starting HRT or PEDs? Okay, so where to start researching in terms of PEDs? I'm going to tell you what I did, which I think is like the right thing to do. So if you are an individual potentially wanting to go down this route, there's a few really good podcasts that I would recommend listening to. So the J3U podcast has a few episodes on female PED use. Corey Hageman's Self-Selecting podcast, she's probably someone who I listen to a lot. She put out a lot of really good information and good content about female PED use, safe for use models. If you're a coach, the J3U level 1 and the J3U women's module are both fantastic. So PEDs in general, J3U level 1 is such a good course. It's basically a bodybuilding course. It's how to prep an off season and everything to do with bodybuilding. It's a course I recommend to everybody because it's so in depth, and they're always updating it as well. But they have an entire section about PEDs, generally for men, so like every sort of PED, the, you know, non-androgenics, the health kind of supplements, every class of PEDs like your 19-NORs, testosterone, your DHT derivatives, how to monitor health when you're on them, you know, when things like, you know, how to determine like blood work if things have gone wrong. So the J3U level 1 is really good. The J3U level 1 only opens at the start of each month, and I hate to plug, I do actually have a promo code, so if you want to use it, it's Emma10, and you'll get, I think it's like $300 or $400 off. It's really good. So I would definitely recommend that. I think that's great as a coach. If you're into bodybuilding, it's a fucking great course to do. And then they also have a women's module. So the women's module is, again, it's a walkthrough of like from female menstrual health, female categories, and then a good bit about female PED use. I would highly recommend that you do this. I actually think if you are going to be prescribing women PEDs, that's a must-do course because it covers everything. And that's kind of the framework that I follow is, you know, their whole thing is start with hormonal assistance, and then, you know, if you need to layer in things like anabolics, you can use the non-androgenic pathways first to prevent any virilization. So I would really recommend that. And again, I think you can use my code Emma10 and you can buy that at any time. So those are good courses because they have all the literature, the data, the science, as well as it's made by John Jewett and Luke Miller, who coach a lot of women. So it's the science and then real world application, because a lot of PEDs, you know, we talk about what's safe, but then what's actually done, right? There is a difference, okay? Because people want to be competitive. So I think it's a great course to do. But then Corey Hageman, and I think those would be the main people, I'm trying to think if there's anywhere else. I listen to a lot of podcasts. The Physique Collective. So Joe Jeffries, great. Like, he has a lot of information about female PED use. He is also great. And then what I did, so here's what I did when I was thinking about this, is I listened to all the podcasts and I took in all the information, and then I kind of went, okay, but what would I need to do? So what I did is I paid Luke Miller, that guy I just mentioned who made J3U, I paid him like quite a lot of money, for an hour consultation. And I basically brought him my blood work and I explained, I said, okay, here's what I've done. Here's what I want to do. What would someone like me have to do to go in down the enhanced route? What could it potentially look like for someone like me based on what you know and how you coach people? And, you know, what are the risks and stuff like that? And he sat me down and, like, you know, to be fair, it was so in depth. He brought me through the entire framework. He went through my blood work. I'll never forget. He opened my blood work and he looked at the testosterone and his face just goes, wow, you must feel awful. And I was like, yeah, I guess. Because for reference, I had no, like, undetectable. They couldn't detect testosterone in my blood. So not good for a female. So that was really, really helpful for me. And that then meant that when I reached out to my coach, Christian, and I asked him, I now knew at this point, this is probably what I would want to do. I asked him what he would advise me to do. And he said the exact same thing. And that's how I kind of knew he was probably going to be a good person to go with, because he wasn't going to be advising any crazy, weird drug protocols. And I felt then like safe, and I felt like I had the knowledge, right? I'd spent, like, this was like a good, I don't know, 5 months, 6 months. Any podcast I found that was in any way related to female PED use, I listened to it. Any like videos I could find, I did the courses, I did the consultation. And I think that ultimately meant then that when I made the decision, I felt informed. It wasn't just, oh, I think I want to take drugs, I'm going to just reach out to a coach and ask him and then just see what he does. Like, do whatever he tells me. I think if you are going to take any sort of performance enhancing drug, you need to understand how it works and why you're using it and why it's being prescribed. And, you know, I think like it is your responsibility as an athlete to understand a little bit. You don't have to understand all the science and the biochemistry, like, of course not, but, you know, understand, like, why are you using it? Is it valid? You know, is this a safe compound for me to use? I've just heard of crazy stuff, right? Like, I've heard of girls being prescribed, you know, like Winstrol, like fucking, I mean, Tren. Like, that's not unheard of, okay? And just, no. And then someone else, the other question was, if it's not too late, where should training, nutrition and habits be before starting HRT or PEDs? Pretty fucking locked in, okay? I will always say this. When I was going to make the leap, I knew I had, I suppose you could say, earned the right. You know, I'd been bodybuilding for years. I was a very, 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 very good natural athlete. And I don't, you know, I fucking won. I won a pro card, okay? I won a European title. So I clearly wasn't shit at what I did. I would never miss training sessions. I was very on it. Like, my nutrition is very dialed in. My sleep is good. My recovery is good. And I was doing that for years and years and years and years. And I'm not saying that everybody has to do that, but if your training is shit and your food is inconsistent, yeah, you could take drugs and they might make a bit of a difference. But imagine taking drugs on top of everything else being perfect. It's going to be like, whew, it's going to be a huge difference, okay? And, like, you know, even if you were to look at me, like, I've made progress over the last year, right? Or like year and a half. But it's not been anything, I mean, it's not been absolutely nutty. Like, you're not looking at it going, Jesus, like, what the fuck did she do? Like, don't get me wrong, I'm so happy with the progress I've made, and I know that I look really fucking good. Well, I look pretty good, but the drugs don't, like, fix everything, and they don't just do the work for you. It's not like you can just take drugs and just look insane. It doesn't work that way. So I always think to myself, like, I want to know I'm going to get the absolute most out of these, you know, performance enhancing drugs. And the way that I know I'm going to get the most out of them, because let's be real, you are risking your health, okay? Especially like any form of anabolic, right? You're risking your health, whether that's as a woman, potentially virilization, those sorts of side effects, or just in general. Like, we know that anabolic steroids can have detrimental effects on things like your brain health, your cardiovascular health, right? So why would you take that risk if you're also not already optimizing everything else and getting the most out of it? It just doesn't make sense to me. I'm not saying you have to be 100% perfect every single day, because I'm not. Like in an off season, I'll have an off plan meal and stuff like that, but I'm pretty fucking dialed in. And if I have clients who want to go down that route, right? Like, and we have conversations about this, and I always say to them, like, I want to see what you can do in like a year with just fucking nailing your training, watching their training videos. Are they training with good intensity, execution? Because you're going to get so much more from training properly and being like natty than from training like shit and just taking drugs, because again, like, let's say you're trying to train your glutes, right? And you start taking a load of drugs, but when you're actually training, all you're doing is training your lower back. Funny enough, your lower back is going to grow. Your glutes are not going to grow, right? So I think those should always be the baseline first, and you should extract as much. I'm not saying you need to like reach your natural potential. I don't think that's true at all, because that could take you 20 years. But I would like to see somebody spending a good amount of time training really, really well, really hard, recovering well, eating properly, and nailing everything before jumping into any sort of PEDs. Because the thing is, like, especially as a female, once you start taking PEDs, not only are you getting closer and closer to the point at which you'll have to stop before you virilize too far, right? Like the way you can kind of think about this is like, there's like an amount of drugs you can take before you start to notice side effects that are maybe unwanted, okay? So let's be honest, as a female, things like your voice deepening, facial hair, body hair in general, clitoral growth, these are all real things that can happen when you take anabolic steroids, okay? So you want to think of it as like a cup, right? So we all have a cup, and every time we take any sort of anabolic, we're filling that cup up, right? As soon as we overspill the cup, that's it. Right? We're virilizing. Now, some females will say, I don't care. I have big goals. I want to be on the Olympia stage in women's physique. Shit's gonna happen. Fine. If that's what you want to do, that's what you want to do, right? I personally don't want the cup to overflow. I want to always be a female, which means I have a limited amount of time that I can spend taking anabolics. So once you start, that cup is starting to fill up, right? Wouldn't you rather spend time before you start filling that cup actually making shit tons of progress, being like natty? Do you know? That's kind of like how I like to think about it. So I would say they should be pretty good. Like, you shouldn't be using drugs to mask poor adherence, shitty training, bad recovery. Like, no. And you shouldn't be using drugs just because you're impatient. If you want to get on stage next year and look wildly different, and you're like, oh, I'm just going to smash Anavar for the next 16 weeks. I would argue against that. I definitely had another question about PEDs. Oh yes, so someone asked, how do I tell my coach I want to go assisted? She thinks I should do another natty season, but I feel as though I'm ready for a sprinkle of assistance and I'm serious about going pro. Tell her, okay? Tell her. It's not her decision. Now, as a coach, it's her responsibility. I suppose my first question would be, is she experienced with handling assisted athletes? Because she might just not be, and she might just not want to lose you as a client. That could be the case, right? If she doesn't coach assisted athletes, well, of course she's going to want to do another natty prep so that you stay with her. That's one thing. If she does coach assisted athletes, ask her why she thinks that. Does she feel that you could have done better? Is there a reason that she's advising that? How old are you? Are you 20 years old? If you're 20 years old, I would also tell somebody, no, you should compete naturally again, because you're young. Again, remember, come back to what I said there about the cup. As soon as you start filling that up. Now, again, there's lots of non-androgenics you can go down. You can use Clen, you can use growth hormone, himbine. These are things that you can use, but I would just ask her and tell her, right? Like, just ask her, like, to have a conversation and say, listen, I have thought about this. This is something I want to do. I would appreciate your support. I also understand if there's maybe reasons that you don't think I should do this. Yes, I'd love to hear them. I'd love to hear if there's things you want to see me doing differently or doing better. And yeah, just ask. But like, your coach should support you, right? Like, that's what they're there to do. And especially if you've already done a prep and proven that you can follow through with the prep process. I mean, listen, there's a lot of context I'm not getting here. Feel free to message me on Instagram if you want to provide me with more context. But yeah, I would just tell her, right? Again, like, maybe have you outright told her? Have you outright said to her, I want to go assisted? Because some people think this in their brain. They think things in their brain and they never say it out loud to their coach. And funny enough, as a coach, I know, like, I'm good at things, but I'm not a fucking mind reader. Okay, so that is just another thing to keep in mind. Someone asked, oh, I lost my period and I haven't gotten it back during the bulk. Do I continue into my shoot prep in the new year, or should I be taking my lack of period more seriously and hold off? I don't want to hold off. Okay, I'm going to answer this from my own perspective, and I'm going to answer this as a responsible individual. So from my own perspective, I did this, okay? I did this when I went into my first prep. I did a pre-prep diet and I lost my period and I didn't get it back. And I knew going into that prep was kind of risky, because I was like, listen, I had been waiting years to do this prep and I didn't want to wait. So I did my bloods and they were fine. Like, they weren't great, but I just said, listen, I'm going to fucking do it. I knew the risks. And I mean, looking back, it probably wasn't the best idea, but I don't know. I personally feel like I was doomed to be hormonally sensitive forever. And part of me feels ashamed for like talking about this, because in my head, I'm like, oh, you should have waited to get your period back. But I was stubborn. And also, the thing is, I did everything to get it back. Like, my weight was up. I was eating lots of food. It was the same post-show. I spent months, like 7-8 months. I was hefty. My weight was up. I was doing everything to get it back. And I didn't get it back. So I understand like the stubbornness. With a shoot prep, honestly, I would say like you can do a photo shoot anytime. I would get your bloods done, okay? I would definitely get your bloods done and just see, because you might be able to tell if you're in any way close to getting it back, right? Like if you have FSH and LH signaling, then your body is trying to kickstart that process. Another question is, when did you lose your cycle? What weight were you? Are you back at that weight again? But also another question, like, do you want to be a mother? Like, is that really important to you? I will say this, I'm 28 years old and I can say this, I don't really want to have kids. I never did. I don't like the idea of having kids. I hate the idea of being pregnant. Makes me feel sick. Sorry, I'm sorry to any mothers out there. It's nothing against you guys. It's just me personally. I've known this a long time and it's not something I've changed my mind on. So, you know, that kind of risk of maybe not being able to have kids, it's whatever, like it doesn't bother me too much. But if you really care, then that is something that you might want to really reconsider, is like going straight into another diet. But are your fats high? Are you taking supplements that can potentially help? There's a lot that you can do to potentially get your period back that you might not already be doing. But because it's just a photo shoot, I honestly would probably hold off. And again, as a coach, I would advise someone to hold off, because again, it is just a photo shoot. You can literally do it at any time. And, you know, it is your long-term health that you're potentially playing with here. Again, it's hard because I've done it myself. So I'm not going to sit here on a high horse and be like, you should always prioritize your hormonal health. Like, of course you should. But I didn't do that. And I'm going to be honest about that, right? Even if people listening to this think like, God, that's so irresponsible. I know. Sorry, it's just what I was like, okay? But yeah, I would definitely get bloods done, have a chat to your coach about it, and just see like what might be an option for you guys to do. Okay, someone asked me, will you be having Christmas dinner on prep? I already talked about this, I think, but yes, I am planning to. I'm planning to just probably have my normal breakfast, then probably just do like protein veg for 2 meals, and then have my Christmas dinner. And then that should be it, which to be fair will probably still have me like below my calories. But yeah, I'm gonna enjoy it. I'm gonna eat really slowly. I'm gonna savor it, and then that's gonna be it. Usually I'd have Christmas dinner about 3 times, about 3 plates of Christmas dinner, but I'm just gonna have the one. Oh, someone asked, how can people do their posing practice with socks on? Just wondering. I mean, one reason is it keeps your shoes clean, but another reason is I'm too lazy to take my socks off. If I'm in a fucking gym and it's cold, I'm not taking my socks off. That's why. There's no real reason for that. Should you do cardio by heart rate or keep settings on the machine consistent? Okay, in my first prep, what I did was I actually got a polar chest strap and I wore it every time I did my cardio. And the first time I did the cardio session, I measured how many calories I burned. And then every cardio session after that, I aimed to burn the same amount of calories. You can do that, or you can just do, like when I did my my photo shoot prep earlier this year, I just did like 30 minutes, however many times a week. Like, in an ideal world, you would keep your heart rate consistent, because as you get fitter, your heart rate adapts. So, you know, say you're doing level 7 on stairs, that at the start of prep might get you to 150 beats per minute. But as you get fitter, it might bring you down to 130, 120. So now you're burning less calories. So by that token, like, yes, you probably should check your heart rate. And I would, when you're on the machine, check your heart rate. It depends if you have like an Apple Watch or whatever. I don't have anything like that. So I just check on the machine sometimes. But I will say, because I take Yimbine and Clen, like my heart rate is so high all the time anyway that I'm hitting my heart rate. So it depends. Like your coach will probably advise you, I tell my clients like hit between 130 and 150 beats per minute. With keeping the machine settings consistent, you probably won't want to do that because, like I said, you'll get fitter. So, for me right now, I'm doing like level 7 on the stairs. I'll probably get up to 8, 9, 10 because I'll need to do that to get my heart rate up. So you should probably be adjusting the settings as you get fitter to ensure that you're continuing that caloric burn. Need to get less steps and start weightlifting. Any tips for guilty mindset that comes when eating more food and not moving as much? Coming from someone who's just lost 40 kilos, I'm scared I will gain it back. So this is definitely, I've definitely done lots of podcasts about this, and I even have YouTube videos about this as well, like the bulking mindset. Now, I wouldn't even use the word bulking for you, it's just reversing. But the first thing you have to remember is you cannot live your life trying to be in a deficit. It's so miserable. I'm going to say the same thing that I say to every single one of my clients who maybe gets a bit anxious about going into a gaining phase. And that is, as long as you are training hard and as long as you are eating a healthy diet, your body is always going to reflect that. Just from doing a few less steps and starting to eat a bit more and fueling some good training sessions, you're not going to gain 40 kilos back in a week. If you do, something's gone terribly, terribly wrong. But just take it slowly and just remind yourself, like, life is better when you actually eat enough to feel fueled, and start focusing on your performance. Focus on being able to go into the gym and train really hard and enjoying your sessions. Like, it's a mental burden to constantly be, I have to do 20,000 steps. I have to eat this little amount of food. What would life be like if you just let the reins loose a little there? Okay. But I promise, like, you're not going to just gain all that weight back. Someone asked, is there a place for periods without tracking / eating intuitively in a bodybuilding off season? And I suppose, like, I would say yes. I know lots of bodybuilders who do this and it works just fine for them. I personally am, I just like tracking. I like tracking. I like knowing what I'm having. I'm also a little bit of a greedy piggy. So I feel like if I didn't track, I would potentially overeat, especially if I was in a gaining phase. But I mean, I know lots of really great bodybuilders who do this and it does not affect their progress. I just enjoy tracking. So yeah, I mean, I don't see why not. I mean, I would wait until you're a few months into your off season and like really settled, post show and stuff like that, and your relationship with food is good. And then I would just move away from tracking in a way that you're still keeping the same structure, right? Like, the thing with tracking is just a tool to help you understand energy balance and what a healthy diet looks like for you. So you should be able, listen, if I go on holidays, I don't track. You should be able to take away the app and still eat in a similar fashion. Like, my meals are going to look the same. I'm going to eat protein at every meal. I know how much fruits and veggies to eat. So if anything, it's a good way to test yourself to see if you've actually learned anything from tracking. If you want to be 100% optimal, you probably do want to track. Okay, but again, not everybody needs to be or wants to be. That's a very personality driven thing. Like, I'm like that. I like being like that, but I don't think everybody has to be. Next question, opinion on microwave meals, fit food meals, etc. They're fine in a pinch. I personally don't like them. I would rather cook my food fresh. I also find they don't tend to have that much veggies. That's my only issue. What do you think is the biggest mistakes most first time competitors do? Okay. As a first-time competitor, I think one mistake that some people make is they compare their prep to other people. So not only do they compare how they look to other competitors, which is always just so silly because you're never going to look like anybody else, and there's no point in driving yourself mental looking at other people, looking up people on Instagram who you're doing their show and stuff. But I think a lot of first timers compare what they're doing to what other people are doing. So it's either, like, she's eating more than me, or she's eating less than me, she's doing more cardio than me, why am I doing that many steps? And so I think it's really important to remember to just stay in your lane. And I think a piece of advice I always give any first timers is have no expectations. Have no expectations around how you're going to do, because you don't know. You have no idea what you're going to look like up on stage or who you're going to be competing against, and have no expectations about what that prep is going to look like. Have no expectations about when you're going to get a refeed, when you should be pushing harder, when you should be pulling back, because it is all so new and so novel. So just go into it with a completely open mind and just focus on enjoying each and every single day. I think a lot of competitors, they wish the prep away because they just want to get to the stage day, and you're robbing yourself of the chance to enjoy that journey. So yeah, I suppose that would maybe be a little mistake. Do you think a person needs a lot of willpower to compete in bodybuilding, and do you think anyone can do it? Absolutely not. Bodybuilding is not for anybody, not for everyone. That's the point. Like, not that that's the point, but it's like asking, can anybody be an Olympic sprinter? Of course not, okay? Genetics matter, but even just your mindset and your psychology matters too. Of course you need a lot of willpower. I mean, you're gonna go 6, 7, 8 months saying no to a lot of stuff. I don't necessarily think about it as willpower. I have just created systems in my brain to make that easy for me to do, and I love doing it. So it's never for me a question of willpower. I don't have to, I don't look at, cookies and be like, oh my God, I really want to eat them, but I just have to exert my willpower. I just live this way. So I don't really think about the willpower, but when it comes to can anybody do it? No, of course not. It's not for everybody. I would argue there's a lot of people who compete who should not compete because they're not ready, they're not mentally ready, they're not physically ready, even if it's like for health reasons that they shouldn't be doing it. So no, I definitely don't think that anybody can do bodybuilding. It takes a special kind of messed up person to do bodybuilding. I think anybody can get in amazing shape. Anybody can get lean, anybody can build muscle. Of course, okay? So if by bodybuilding that's what you mean, sure. But can anybody compete? No. Not everybody should or can get to those levels of body fat, get up on stage and prance around in their underwear. And yeah, and I think like people who say that anybody can do it are lying. Oh, good question. Do you keep a cut and a bulk wardrobe? I'm so afraid of not fitting in my clothes and having to buy a whole other set. Yeah, of course. Of course I don't fit in the same clothes when I'm 130 pounds versus when I'm 160 pounds. I have 2 separate wardrobes. I have clothes that I know fit me when I'm building and when I'm gaining, and I have clothes that I know fit me when I'm really lean. I've less of those. I don't buy a lot of clothes when I'm super shredded because they're not going to fit me for long. But my number one tip for anybody in a building phase is to wear clothes that fit you and to buy clothes that fit you, because it's fucking miserable trying to fit into super tight clothes that are just like really uncomfortable, and there's honestly just no point. Let's get into the final question, because this question came up about 6 or 7 times, and it is about the new fit model division in the NPC. So I'm just gonna I'll ask one of the questions and I'll just talk about it. So, opinion on this new IFBB category. As someone that strives to be an IFBB pro, I never said that, by the way, you're putting that on me. Do you think they're just making that title less and less impressive, which is a good take? And then, yeah, just generally a lot of questions about thoughts on the new fit model category. Seems like it's encouraging people to stay small. So, for anybody who doesn't know, the NPC, which is the amateur division of the IFBB, have just brought out and just announced a new female category called Fit Model. And they have said they want Fit Model to essentially be what 2015 bikini was. They've used Ashley Kaltwasser when she won the 2015 Bikini Olympia as the kind of the standard, the criteria. This is what they want to see. So they want to see, in Tyler Mannion's words, no glute ham tie-in, no cap delts, no visible etched in abs, which was a bit interesting because the pictures of Ashley, she kind of has some of those stuff, so that was a bit weird. It's supposed to be, I suppose, like a beach body, lean toned, and essentially what bikini was supposed to be. The thing with bodybuilding is it evolves. So bikini when it started is nothing like bikini now. Bikini now, those girls are jacked. Very rare to see somebody on the Olympia stage who is not enhanced, or even a pro who is not enhanced and taking probably a fair amount of enhancements. It's not really achievable for anybody, and it's not really achievable for a lot of natural athletes. And even if you look at figure now is so much bigger than figure used to be. I would almost argue that the categories have taken the place of each other. So, bikini now, it's not unlike what figure used to be. Figure now is not unlike what women's physique used to be, and women's physique now is not unlike what women's bodybuilding used to be. So all of the classes have sort of slid up in terms of how lean the competitors get, how big the competitors get. And I think the NPC or the IFBB were essentially in a position where we either pull the categories back to what they used to be, which essentially then means that all the top competitors now no longer fit the criteria. So what, you're going to tell Laura Leach-Patos she has to go and compete a figure? That was never going to happen. Or we introduce a new category to almost like reset it. Okay, so to reset this. Now, I have multiple thoughts. As a coach, I see the value in this. First of all, great business move. Let's be real. This is a business move. Now not anybody, but a lot of people can compete now who maybe couldn't compete before. That's a lot more people paying entry into shows, a lot more people buying NPC registrations. It's great. It's a great business move. It's more money. There's going to be a male one's going to come out, Beachbody or something, and it's going to be the old men's physique. Just wait. But as a coach, okay, yeah, I see the value in not having to push people to build as much muscle or get as lean. But then as a competitor, I just think that's the fucking point of bodybuilding. You know, Ashley Kaltwasser said on her story, you know, about it, she was like, this is great for girls who maybe don't want to, you know, get as lean or as muscular. And I'm just thinking, but that's what bodybuilding is. You know, girls who don't want to get lean and muscular, they shouldn't bodybuild. They should just do like swimsuit pageants. That's what that's for, right? Or do the WBFF, right? I personally, as a bodybuilder, I don't like it. I don't like it at all. One thing that I really dislike is these people, like these girls who are going to do this category, that, let's be real, the whole idea is you can do this with very minimal training. There's going to be people who could do this with 6 months of training. You should not be allowed to be called be a pro bodybuilder with doing that little work. That is my opinion. You know, I think they are going to give pro cards for this class, okay? They're going to give pro cards for this division, and they're going to go to the Olympia. There's people who've been working for 10 fucking years to get a pro card in one of the actual bodybuilding classes and to get to the Olympia. There's pros who've been competing for 10 years and they're trying to get to the Olympia. And I feel like it kind of robs the eliteness from what a pro bodybuilder is. So I think it's great. I just don't like it in the NPC and the IFBB. Like, the whole point is that this is the pinnacle. This is the top of the top. And you're going to have people who have not been working for that long, and let's be real, don't have to really push themselves all that much to get a pro card. Like, to me, that just seems fucking wild. If they are going to give pro cards, what I personally would like to see as a competitor is that those pros are not allowed to cross compete. In the IFBB, if you win a pro card, you are a pro and you can compete in any pro class. If I win a pro card, or if I happened to win a pro card in wellness, I could go and do figure. I could go and do bikini if I wanted to. I don't like the idea of someone who's done fit model, which is supposed to be this really easy class, then being allowed to go, well, I'm just going to go and do bikini now. Because I think it's going to encourage people not to like not work as hard, but kind of to not work as hard. And I don't like that. So as a competitor, I don't love it. Now, I'm sure when they brought in bikini 10 years ago, it was the exact same. And I'm sure people shit on it. So I'm not saying it's a bad move. I just don't really like it for the IFBB. I think it's taken away from the more muscular categories as well. You know, I think anybody knows they don't give a lot of time to figure women's physique and bodybuilding. Those categories aren't even in the Arnold. There's very few pro shows that carry those classes, especially women's physique and bodybuilding. And I would rather see them put more time and energy into those. But again, those classes are less attainable. It takes a lot more time, energy, and drugs to get there. So I can see why they've brought this in. But yeah, as a competitor, I don't love it. I don't love it. And I don't think they should give pro cards for it, to be honest. I don't think it's a pro-worthy class. It's an easy class. You know, I know people who could fucking do Pilates and hop on that fit model stage according to the criteria that they're looking for. And I don't think that is worthy of being called a professional bodybuilder in the best bodybuilding league in the world. I don't like that. Bikini has become unattainable for a lot of people. So now it's giving them a class, and that's great. And that's fantastic. But I think that those people should always have to stay amateurs. That's my personal opinion. Like, yeah, the idea of having a bodybuilding class, you know, I saw someone make a really good comment in response to what Ashley Kay said. It's like, that's like saying, this is great for people who want to swim, but who don't want to get wet. And I was thinking, yeah, that's 100% it. So I don't love it. I don't love it. It's going to be interesting to see how it evolves. I'm sure, like anything else, if anything now, this is going to give all the other categories room to push even further. Because now they're not going to have to try and bring bikini back. So now the bikini girls are probably going to get bigger and leaner. It's going to keep going. So it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. But yeah, as a competitor, don't like it. Will have no interest in watching it. As a coach, you know, I had some people ask me, like, would you train people for it? I mean, if people really want to do it, sure. But I would not be excited about coaching that class at all. Like, it's going to be, you know, like, I love bodybuilding because it takes so much work. It takes years. It takes years to build a really fucking good physique. And I love that because it's such a time commitment and it's such a sign of someone's hard work. Whereas I know a lot of people who could probably just jump on that stage next week and they'd look amazing. And that's great for them, but it just, I don't know, it kind of negates a bit of that hard work. So yeah, that's my kind of thoughts. It's interesting. It is interesting. It's been all over my page and all over my feed. I'm not saying it's like stupid, but I don't love it. I don't love it. Okay, so I've had somebody ask a few questions as well. So someone asked about the difference between the female bodybuilding classes. So I kind of mentioned that, like, basically you start a bikini, wellness, figure, women's physique, women's bodybuilding. Each one goes up in terms of muscularity and condition. I'd say wellness and figure are similar enough, but obviously wellness has a really small lower body, really small upper body, which is similar to bikini, and then bigger legs than figure. Bikini is more hourglass silhouette. No body part should really catch your eye. It should all be very seamless package. Wellness is lower body dominant. Figure is X frame, and then women's physique is X frame. Bodybuilding's X frame, but bigger and leaner. That's like a very basic explanation. What made you change from lifestyle to wellness? Well, I actually went lifestyle, figure, wellness. I was living like a bodybuilder anyway. Like, I just loved bodybuilding, and I just thought, fuck it, I'm going to try competing, honestly. And what do you have to do differently in prep or on a show day? I mean, the biggest difference in a prep is just everything is 100% accurate. Like, everything is weighed accurately, everything is accounted for, there's no extra bites or anything. You're doing more cardio, you're doing more steps, you're doing a lot more posing practice. Those are sort of the main differences. And show day, I'm gonna vlog my show days. It's honestly so hard to explain, but show days is a lot of waiting around, honestly. You're just waiting between getting your tan done, getting your makeup done, going on stage, and especially as a female competitor. Like, I've had show days I'm not on until 7 p.m. I fucking hate it. Give me a show day where I'm on in the morning, please. So that's a very quick fire answer of all those questions. Okay, I'm gonna wrap up this here because I've only got 5 minutes left on the camera, but I think we've been going for about over an hour. So that's pretty good. I'm gonna have to cut out loads of this because I kept coughing, which you won't be hearing. But okay, if you have made it this far, thank you so much for listening and or watching. Please don't forget to either subscribe to my channel or follow the podcast and give me a rating and a review. Leave a like, leave a comment, any sort of engagement you can do to this. I really appreciate it. If you're interested in coaching spaces, links will always be down below. I've got my usual one-to-one coaching. I've also got Excellence 55 starting January 6th, which you can start or you can join. And aside from that, don't forget to share it on your social media and tag me at emma.curvin. I always do appreciate it. And I will catch you in the next one. Bye.